So, hey everyone, Daniel here. Today I'm talking with Justin Lam he's actually the owner and creator of 360 Media, a photography agency. Justin essentially has been in the business for quite some time, has worked with Sortbase and Nintendo and a couple of others. And today we're going to learn all about his experience on starting a photography business and beyond. As you're going to learn, Justin is so much more than a photographer. So welcome to the show, Justin.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about you in a nutshell. Like when somebody asks you, what do? What do you tell them very straightforwardly?
So I guess it depends on who I'm talking to. So if I'm talking to entrepreneur, person who's just getting started up, I'm a person who helps take their idea, their concept of business, and help distill that down into tangible bite-sized pieces for the masses.
That's sweet.
So that way they can consume it, and we do that in a visual medium. So we do it through photo, video, whether it's a ground level activation where we're doing photo booths, collecting data, however that might be to engage in a person's brand.
Okay.
If I'm talking to a marketing agency, I am their bolt-on production agency. So generally they work with high-level concepts, and then they come and ask somebody like us to do the production. So we can bridge the gap between high-level strategies all the way down to the production end of things. So we can source actors, doing scripting, and then production work. So I think agencies like us in that regard, because we don't just come up and do work, we understand the global concepts that go behind it, the strategy portion, and then we're able to translate that and then affect that into a medium that is going to be effective to the target end consumer.
Very cool, very cool. That's awesome. How long have you been doing this?
So it's been, coming up to 20 years.
Okay.
We started officially, like the business
in 2002.
Okay. Prior to that I was doing a little bit of portrait work and not necessarily really running a business, but it wasn't until 2002 decided to get serious, sign the dotted line on being a business, and then started that whole journey.
Very cool. Awesome. So it's been quite a while. How do you get the best results when you actually walk into a cold environment, essentially? When you do like those photo shoots, how do you prepare for those?
Well, generally, if somebody's come to contact us for a particular event or a particular project, I generally have a very good understanding of what that person's brand voice looks like to begin with. So whether it is an accounting firm or a sole entrepreneur, I do a little bit of digging and research about that person and their space. And so I get to dig in the minds of the people who kind of live in that space for them as their end consumer. And from there, that's where I decide, what we decide to do in terms of a look, a pose, the type of content that we produce or capture. That's when we start to ask pertinent questions that give us a little bit more teeth in the actual production work. So, it's asking them what their brand palette is. It's asking the age demographic of the people who consume it, the shopping habits, and putting all of those things together. Then we kind of think in the mind of the consumer, well, how do we then target them? And so then we ask our client, what is it that, how are you going to distribute that? Like, how are you going to reach that final line consumer? And we make sure that they have all their ducks in a row, because if they don't, what often happens, and where I think a lot of people get frustrated, is when they have these ideas about getting great photography, but they never have the right vehicles to necessarily go and put it out there. And that's the hard part. They feel like they're going to be out there.
Sorry about that. But yeah, no, you can continue. Just 2 seconds. I forgot to press this button. There you go. Sorry about that.
So, I'll go back to that. It's when a person goes and has an idea to take photos and to put it on social media, I think a lot of times they don't really know what that really means or how to get the most equity out of it, the return on investment, or they don't understand what they're looking for in terms of an ROI. And so for us, it's helping them understand not only what that vehicle looks like in terms of the photo or the video, but it's also what type of tires we're putting on the road. So, whether it's through a social medium, it's whether through a blog article, whether they're using pay-per-click or SEM,
Right.
all of those things come into play on how we position some of that material that we're producing, especially in video, where we look at, what is a person going to see and where are they going to come across it, how much time do I have to hook them,
Right.
or how is that person already a warm lead versus a cold lead.
Okay.
And so all these things have to come into play when we go and do it. So
And that will all be part of your research.
yeah, so that's
before
all the
actually
stuff that we
engaging.
do. Either we pre-production where we go in when we first meet the client to get an idea, or if it's an event of some sort, somebody's hired us purely for a transactional purpose,
Right.
and not wanting to really do the legwork. They just kind of want a person to show up, take some photographs. We still do our research a little bit more about who they're delivering to. We take a look at their social media feeds to see what type of stuff do they really like to push out. What does the look and color of that look like? So we know what we're bringing to the table, how we photograph it, sometimes how we decide to light it.
Very cool.
If they're like ambient people talking all the time, they might not want as many people looking at camera. So we
Right.
just kind of keep all of those things into
Very cool.
consideration.
Very interesting. That's a lot more details than we think, right? So I listened to you, and clearly you're not just a photographer, right? That's the service that you lead to, but what's the primary focus of what you want to do? Like,
Well, where I want to take the space, so I'll back that up. Where we started was photography, and then we grew into the other visual mediums, so videography, and then doing things like photo booth. The end game of it was really we wanted to work as an agency. I think as a small entrepreneur, we focused so much of our time and money into trying to make our businesses take off,
right?
and I think a lot of the time, a lot of that money is burned primarily because we as entrepreneurs just think that we either need a fancy new website, a new logo, we need pictures, but we don't necessarily know what to do with all of those assets.
Right.
We just feel like everybody needs them.
We just feel that need of everybody, that we
it's
need something.
It's a shiny new object, and,
Right.
and a lot of it is it's a procrastination tactic in
Absolutely.
its purest form, because if your message was good, you could write it on a pizza box, and it wouldn't matter. People would still buy into whatever it is you sold. So what I want to evolve 360, and which is sort of in transition now, is we want to work in a space where we get to help SMEs, so small and medium-sized enterprises, refine their marketing techniques, and get real bang for their buck, and not burn their money where money really isn't present in a lot of times, where they're struggling to make rent, or they're struggling to expand. And what I want is to help them overcome some of those pitfalls that we ran into when we first started, that we see some of our clients struggle through.
Right.
And we spent a copious amount of money in terms of branding, building websites that were 10,000 and then building websites that were 1,000. So we've been through that whole
Right.
ride, and there's some things that were tried, tested, and true. Things that I thought, when you spend money, you're spending it in a good place.
Right.
And then there are things where, like, money was just burned, and
Can you give me an example of that?
So we had a person who did a website, and at the time I knew a little bit of coding, not a lot of coding,
Okay.
and so this person did it. He did the wireframing, which I understood, but then simple things like changing text on an image would then be this laborious thing where he actually embedded the text on my image instead of having an overlay.
Making the whole process overcomplicated.
Yeah, and so what ended up happening is I would have to burn money to get him to change one little thing, and I was lucky because I knew enough code to go in and figure out what he did and how he
Right.
Frankensteined the website together. And what costed me 10 grand, I could have done probably for a third of the amount of money, with anybody who was remotely competent. And that was
Right.
frustrating, because that means that there are other people who are in that space. And I don't mind. I'm not about the bottom line. I'm about the value that presents
that's
to
the
me,
thing,
right?
right?
And what I want to do is I want to provide that value proposition to business owners, where that when they're hiring us, they're hiring more than their photographer. They're hiring more than just a person who helping them with a piece of content. Is that I want to look at their entire business, from a very macro perspective first. I mean, unless the person really wants to get down to the nitty gritty, the best I can do is look at from a macro perspective and see where we can improve their rate of return, whether it relates to the visual medium or not.
Right.
But basically put my money where my mouth is. It's like, if I could save you $1,000 in some part of your business that you are clearly struggling with, then that $1,000, I think I would deserve to then put into my budget as production.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? So I rather than say, I just want to spend your money and give you nothing in return, I would rather save the equivalent amount of money that I charge and give you the value, because then I think the value exchange is there. It's like, if a person was able to bring me $500 piece of business for $100 outlay and could do it consistently, I'd sign the check every day.
Absolutely.
Right? It's 5x your money.
Yeah.
But that's not what everybody sees, or that's not how this industry generally works. Like, I think, at least in the small business space where a lot of people are working on their process, like small agencies or shops, and they're dealing with their stuff, I think that there's a disconnect between what value really is,
Yes,
and what they're willing to
agree
charge for it. And we in the wedding side of photography, it's really rampant. It's like, you can price yourself high, and if you value your work at this point, somebody else will value it, and that's only half of the truth. Right? Because the other half of the truth is, yes, if they take you at face value, that's great. But if they're not willing to refer you afterwards, then is that really your face value? You're actually not worth that much. That person experienced you because you were a good salesman.
Right, exactly.
But you didn't provide the same value where the person gushed over you and said, hey, and handed you to the next person, because that's the real litmus test, right? And that's where we rely.
Referrals is like, that's where the money really is, right? Very cool. Awesome. So you started 360 Media in 2002. How did you build it to what it is today?
We'll build it like everybody should build their business.
Okay.
What's
the 3 points that you would say are like no-brainers? If I had not done that, I mean, I'll probably not be where I'm at today.
Well, in the service, in particularly the service industry, I think you need to spend your time with people. So that's your own internal staff, if you have staff. If you're the one-man show, then you spend some time on yourself. That's through self-education.
Not too much. Gets confusing.
Yeah. But then the real equity are the people, the clients that you do have. It's servicing them. It's making sure that their needs are met. It's making sure that you're caring above and beyond. And then it's the same with your vendors or referral sources. So not just necessarily the end clients, but a lot of my business was built where everybody was spending their time on social media and building, pay-per-clicks, building their blogs, building, like their community equity. I spent my time shaking hands and meeting people, taking them out for lunch, trying to understand how I could add value to their business without them having to spend a dime on mine. Right? So I reversed it, and I spent all of that time doing that. And the short game was like, I might not have grown to popularity as fast as some of my other contemporary peers, but now the long game of it is they're suffering because the shiny new object is over. Like, everybody's burnt out all of that blog. The pay-per-clicks are now 6-7 times the price of what they were, right? Social media like Facebook nerfed all the fan pages. Like, now you have to pay for everything, and so now they're suffering. But the long game for me was I have all these deep relationships with people that I spent the last decade with, helping their businesses grow, helping them improve their notoriety, improving their life, adding value to them, and so they remember that. They remember, like, I was the person who maybe helped catapult them to another level in their business, or I was the catalyst to help them move to a new business that they're currently working for, or that, like, I gave them the chops to go out and start a business, or I salvaged their business where they were originally suffering and maybe didn't have that long runway to work with, and then through
Over
some
time,
coaching,
that
some
makes-
help,
yeah, absolutely.
and some real heart-to-heart talks, helping their business then turn around and thrive. And people don't forget that, right?
No, absolutely.
That equity doesn't go away. So,
Exactly.
we also then develop that trust relationship that when I refer or tell them that this is something you should do, I think they take it a lot more seriously.
Right.
And there are times where I decline. It's like, what you think you need right now isn't what you need. You have other bigger burning problems. You should go address that. And that honesty is what really keeps
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
drive. For us, it's the first thing that we think about is, how are we going to add value? And it's not about anything more than wanting somebody else to be successful. That's not only externally, but internally within our studio.
Very nice. You mentioned that some of those people took advantage of social media at the time versus you were more shaking hands. Don't you think that overall, long term, that's going to hurt? Like just having that need of being always face to face? I mean, how scalable is that to some degree?
Well, I don't think social media is any different. In fact, I think social media has become the Vegas of what I do, in terms of
So now
face-to-face
you
networking.
apply all that to
Yeah, because
social
what people are doing now on social media is me,
Yeah.
right? It's no different than when you go to Vegas and you're walking down the strip and the guy's just sitting there with a
Absolutely.
business card flicking in your face because they just want you to pick it up. They're salesmen,
Right.
but there's no real social equity, right? And the
No.
people who are killing it are people who really have social equity in it. Like they're really like taking the time to listen to people, involve themselves in conversations, develop a relationship, and that's no different than what I do for person to person. It's taking the time out, and it's just rather than doing it in a digital world, I decided to do it face to face because I value interactions. And when you're a person halfway around the world having a conversation with me, it might come to fruition. But the honest truth about that is chances are you're just going to be your fan from around another. From the other point of the globe. And
Right.
is that going to affect the bottom line of your business? Likely not. But the relationships that I have here, if I need a hand, if I have a question about something, I can still go to these people
Right.
in my own market and get their take on it. And I decided that giving and being present with one person, I think just goes a lot farther. And there are sayings that go around that you just need to find your first 1,000, and
Yeah.
that 1,000 doesn't have to be on social media. I could have that in one-to-one interactions.
Oh yeah.
And in fact, I think when you're face to face, there's not much you can hide.
Absolutely.
They play poker,
Right.
right? They are behind the screen. You can type something, erase it, retype it until you feel like that's a good response.
Good response.
So
yeah.
then how authentic are you? But the contrast to that would be I'm sitting here in front of you. There's that level of authenticity that I can pick up, when you're playing poker,
Yeah,
unless you're really good at it. But you can pick up if that person is being genuine with you, or
Totally.
whether that piece of business they promised you is really going to come to fruition, or are
Right.
they just talking out of their ass?
Yeah.
So, for me, that's the powerful part of it, and I enjoy it. I enjoy taking people out, go watch a hockey game, go for a walk.
Absolutely.
have-
It's super fun.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I can't take I could. I mean, take a phone and go and watch a hockey game
Yeah, no,
together, right?
Yeah, we could do that in VR actually.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's too funny. Okay, very interesting. No, I'm just curious to see how scalable, Again, do you see yourself as an agency?
Well,
A 360
I mean,
as
if
an
you
agency?
say an agency is a collective of people who are working as a proxy to somebody, yes and no. To a digital agency or marketing strategist, I am a production agency,
Okay.
right? To a solopreneur, I mean, you could call us an agency. I mean, there's
But
just so many different.
do you see that as your business as an agency?
I think that's where it will eventually go. I mean, I'm so nose to the grindstone, and I kind of know where I want to go with everything, and I guess maybe I just don't like the word agency.
That's what I could feel.
I think maybe it's the word agency kind of bugs
Okay.
me because I think of it, the connotation that as an agency we are and full disclosure, like like the word agency is on our Instagram and whatever as a
Right.
brand engagement agency, but I think I use the word agency more so as a word that kind of, because you don't have that many words you can use in the description,
Right.
and it just sort of encompasses. But what
Right.
I am is really a partner, like a vendor. That's what I want to be. I want to be like,
Well, that
I
was my
basically
next-
want to be like a department for any given company as a bolt-on department to do shit that really affects
Right.
the bottom line.
How do you see yourself competing against agencies locally and globally?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's about competition. I mean, I really don't pay attention to a lot of the people in the space. Like there are a few people that are agencies that I work collaboratively with, and I think for me, it's there are no egos. Like I'm as happy taking instructions from an agency, you know, who have grand visions that just need production, as I am with a person who needs a lot more guidance,
Right.
a lot more brand strategy, a lot more discovery about their business to affect a better product. I mean, so for me, there's no chip on the shoulder that says that I've got to be the top level person. I can fit in anywhere that needs to be in that system
Right.
in the hierarchy. I think for me that is important because my ultimate end goal is to serve whoever it is that is the client, right?
Right.
And if that client is an agency, then I'm serving the agency who's ultimately serving their
So
end
that's
user.
suddenly it's not a competitor.
Yeah, so it's not a competitor, and in fact, I think
More business partner. To
yeah,
some degree,
and if
right?
an agency views me as a competitor and they're looking to put me out of business, then that's not going to be the person I'm going to do business with,
Right.
anyways, right? I think by having a person who operates like I choose to operate, I just keep other people around me in this industry more feet to the fire and being accountable for what they're doing.
Right.
Because the long game for those people who aren't operating at a very ethical level or not providing enough value to a client is that they're going to lose the game in the end because they're just ultimately going to run out of people as more agencies like me show up,
Right.
Where we're really trying to salvage and really be compassionate to the business owner who wants to then go to another level and trying to help them find the pitfalls along the way.
Very cool. Very nice. Let's talk a little bit about technology. So technology in the last 20 years, 30 years has really changed the way we do business. How have you adapted in the last 20 years with your business and all the changes in technology? How do you keep up?
Well, my world is huge in technology change. Okay, so we'll start with like the actual gear. So the gear, the technology, when I first started was film. I got into the first wave of digital SLRs, and we changed over from, I want to say 2 megapixels to 6 megapixels to 12 megapixels to now 24
That's because you've been doing that for a long, long time.
Yeah, and so like, we've seen all of that change, which is crazy because like, you imagine in 20 years, like that's at least 3 or 4 sets of camera changes, right? And we got to change a lot of them because we have a crew of people. And then video went from mini DV, well, when I started mini DV, we didn't really do tape, so mini DV, then to like outputting at 1080 or 720p, 1080p, and now 4K is where we're doing a lot of the filming, right? So that amount of technology change is like financial ruin for many people. Hobbyists just don't keep up. So people who are getting into the space now are really lucky. Like, because I don't think that in the next little while that you're going to see a really big shift. I don't see 8K coming into fruition like on your TVs yet. So I think where we're at now is going to be pretty stable for the next few years in terms of that camera technology. Right. So anybody getting into the space now can get in way cheaper than it costed me for all the upgrades, right? $500,000 worth of upgrades till now, like that's like, it's substantial.
Yeah, right.
And then of course the computers that then go with it, right? So
Right.
we went from, the Pentium chip, all the like Celeron chips, all the way up to where
Now
we are
7
today.
core, 8
Yeah,
cores.
7, 8 cores,
Yeah,
right? We're
absolutely.
working with 32 gigabytes worth of RAM. We're working with NOS systems that are 48 terabytes,
Right.
and we archive 24 terabytes every quarter, right? Internet before wouldn't be able to sustain that, so we stored them on DVDs and CDs,
Right.
and then Blu-ray. But those have very short lifespan because we're not imprinting them, we're lasering them in, and so that coding disappears after XYZ amount of time, right? USBs are slow, and now we're at USB 3, and I imagine that storage just gets faster and faster because it's the data transfer that matters.
Yes.
So I'm excited to see what
Kind of
5G brings to the table.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be interesting. From a business aspect, that's websites.
How heavily would you say your
like-
team is dependent on technology today?
Well, we're highly dependent on technology. We're dependent on a lot of software as a service. We're pinned into all of our accounting is all software.
Right.
All of our CRM work is all software. Editing, everything is all technology based. How we keep track of things, how we keep things in real time, so that everybody's on track and on pace.
Right.
When we're at different locations at any given day. Yeah, technology is
Technology is a big
is
thing.
huge. Yeah.
But mostly storage and transfer is like the big issue to some degree.
I think now storage and transfer speeds.
if we look at where the technology is at, cameras and all that.
You're talking like memory cards only transfer. Well, the ones that we're working with are anywhere between 300 megabits per second. Whereas we're working with hard drives that are transferring gigabits per second.
Right.
So we have big bottlenecks, right?
Totally.
What would take 15 minutes to download a whole card takes 2 minutes to transfer into the hard drive.
Right.
From hard drive to hard drive,
Yeah.
it's exponential, right? So I'm excited to see what the wireless capabilities are, but I'm not
You think it's going to make a difference for you?
I think 5G will make a really big difference,
Really?
but I
Okay.
think it'll also make a very big dent in my wallet book because I think they're going to
That's
charge
for
a
sure.
premium.
It's going to come at a
They're gonna
premium
charge a
price for
premium for
sure,
that.
right? Do you have any plans to future-proof 360 Media when it comes down to technology?
I don't think there's anything that you can do to future-proof any business. I think the reality of it is if you're not nimble and you're not looking farther ahead, if you don't have a good number one who is constantly looking for all the icebergs ahead of the ship, that you can't really future-proof your business because any day a new disrupting technology, a new disrupting fad can completely tank your business, and I don't take it for granted any day. So I try to keep on top of all sorts of technology, and I evaluate it for its longevity, its ability to be trendy, and whether or not the financial repercussions of that is going to be viable.
Right.
Whether or not if I decide to invest in something like VR or AR, if I decide to do something like slow motion, where is that money going to come back, and how long is that runway
Right.
before I decide to go in to do it. There are a lot of people, our contemporaries, purchased various photo booths that I looked at and I go, it's not a viable construct. You can't, slow-mo is a fad, and the slow-mo
Right.
booths were a fad. It lasted all of a year and a half, 2 years, and then those
It's
people.
been bad. I would have been like a 6 months bad.
Yeah. So but you're talking about something where people are dumping in $10,000 to get these things, and I looked at it and I go, not a viable business. Same with.
But since you created 360 Media, other than keeping in touch with the people, what would you say is the key elements that you've done throughout your career that kind of kept you on top?
I think there's a.
Because as you know, photographers, there's tons of them that are struggling, not making it, and really suffering. But I see you on the top of your game, and for a long, long time. So how do you keep up? Besides that, that face-to-face seems to be something really, really good for you. Other than that, how you handle your team or anything like that? Any specifics that you would say, hey, yeah, that actually allows me to be in business again 5 years later, 3 years later, compared to some of other players in the game?
I think for me, there's been a constant thirst for knowledge of business and improving it. So 360 isn't the first one. In fact, it's the third one. And so I think I often tell people, especially the people that I coach, it didn't matter whether I was a photographer or if I was a restaurant owner. I think the passion for business was really in the veins. I think it's something that I've
That would make
always
huge
aspired.
difference, right?
Yeah, so I think part of it is the DNA, and we often have conversations with people where, sometimes they're not bred for number one. They might have entrepreneurial tendencies, things that like they might have the desire to want to be an entrepreneur, but when they get faced with all the problems that an entrepreneur has, they put their tail between their legs and they kind of whimper out, right? Whereas I always look at it as a problem that I'm willing to overcome, and I rarely take no for an answer. Like I'm stubborn as fuck some days to really try to go after something that I really want, that I really believe in, and I think that gives me the intestinal fortitude to weather a lot of the storms.
Right.
So that is one thing that I would say, if you as a business owner is kind of deciding whether or not this is going to be your shtick as a business owner, is like, are you willing to go completely against what everybody tells you to do because or you intuitively know that is going to be the right thing? And sometimes the people around you, there's a reason why they're not business owners.
There you go.
And because they don't have the foresight, right?
Right.
Like, and that's the thing. I mean,
what would you say your top quality is for being an entrepreneur today versus 20 years ago?
Well, 20 years ago, it was just the hunger. It was at that point wanting the freedom. So, I mean, I really chased after trying to build things. What I realized over the last maybe 2 or 3 years, where the real strength of what 360 has become, is that I apparently am a pretty decent leader. And I don't think that I'd be as successful without that team behind me. And so in that leadership space, I have the same principles that I do with people externally, like our own clients. So I focus a lot of my time and energy on each and individual person within my organization. I understand their motivation, I understand where they are in life, and I understand all the changes that kind of go through. And I kind of keep my finger on the pulse for everything, which has allowed me to keep nimble, also to be able to pin people with certain strength together, to work on certain projects, and to work on the premise of a meritocracy instead of you have a particular position and that you only stay in that position. We let everybody kind of like branch out and feel, and we take a look at where they've evolved. So I think where the success has lied in the last 3 to 5 years is really in that leadership role, where I've actually seen people come and take ownership of that space that they're occupying, really going gung-ho, going that extra mile that some people wonder why their employees don't do. And it's not like I paid them an exorbitant amount of money. Like, it's not like, and that's what I think a lot of people get caught up on is that because they, as a solopreneur, they equate value as money, but value comes in all sorts of things.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it comes in the form of extra time off, flexibility in schedule, the mentorship and learning, right? Totally. The flexibility.
I say that those things have a lot more value, at least even for us, than money sometimes. You're going to have these really good developers that are going to take the job just for the side value that you bring in versus the money and the paycheck at the end of the day. So it's pretty cool.
And I think that's the neat part about it is we spend so much time one-on-one that, like, when I can tell when somebody's off their game, and knowing as a leader how everybody's operating and whether somebody's overworked or has something that they need to check out for a bit, being able to put that finger on the pulse has really been really amazing to watch what's happened with the people in the organization thus far. Cool. So
can you share with me like one of your biggest failures?
Biggest
business
failures.
Or not?
Biggest failures. So prior to 360, I had an opportunity to create a health studio, and I mean, I was an active rehab therapist when I got out of university, and part of it was like this group of people wanted to create a health studio, and it was my first time working in a partnership.
Okay.
And it was the hardest lesson I probably have had to learn, is to realize how to really vet the people that you're going to work with, because not everybody in the room works as hard as you. And I guess I should have known better, because like when you're
Well,
in
you should
school,
never expect that.
well,
from
because
anyone,
when
right?
you're in school, you experience it. Like you get
Yeah.
these group projects, and there's always one dude who just fucking drags.
Just
right?
doesn't do it.
So in the end, the lesson cost me 30 grand, right?
Okay.
So it cost me 30 grand. Like it was gone. Like, and I had to deal with all the fallout. It was just a messy thing. And it, to me, I think a lot of people would have just packed it in and said, like, I'm just gonna go get a job, because the amount of shit that you deal with is pretty astronomical.
That
And
might be like an area where you actually realize that, you know what, you're born an entrepreneur type stuff when you go through those storms.
I mean,
and
yeah,
kind of,
if you're willing to stomach it and you're still willing to pick yourself up and go, well, that was a lesson, and you just keep on trucking and go after the next thing, I think that's a pretty good sign that there's something wrong with you.
Right.
And that you probably built
You're
to
just
some,
different. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
You're just
yeah,
different.
it's something, and then you just and you're gonna, that maybe you have that entrepreneurial tendency, right? You know, that's one possible indicator. But like, I mean, 30 grand in the hole. I mean, some people just would keel over and die.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
2-3 grand in the hole, people are already struggling. So, you know, and it's weathering all of the calls, the people who come after you for collections,
Right.
you know, whatever all those things are. And you know, like my partner's left me for dead, like literally left me for dead. Like one wasn't even in the country before the end of the full
whole mess.
termination
Right.
and mess, right? So having to deal with that and breaking a lease, that was
I'm
that
sure
was
you learned a lot.
that was traumatizing. I did learn a lot. I was lucky. I had one extra person who stuck it out with me in that partnership, and to this day, I mean, he's still, I feel like he's a good friend. I don't get to see him often, but you know, I am forever indebted, because he, out of that whole thing, the biggest fiasco, I knew who I had in my corner regardless, right? And that's really powerful. I mean, for you to have to go through that for 4 or 5 partners down to one, and one to stick it out with you, like, you know, like that person is your ride or die bitch, right? He's gonna be there for you, and he's willing to go that distance. So, I mean, with that, I'm grateful I found somebody, but I think that was probably the biggest failure I'd ever had. You know, I think every other failure, even within 360, are pale by comparison to that.
Awesome.
That was a clusterfuck.
Hey, maybe that was to prepare you better for 360 stuff.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if it is, but
I just tried to find all the positive stuff all over the place, right? So tell me, what's next for 360?
well, now in this space, I'm in the wings. I've been taking on clients for coaching, and helping their businesses take off to another level. Part of it is a discovery and accumulation of all the things that's happened to me in my personal space, and then bringing that into a distilled piece of content where, you know, we can help another entrepreneur expand their horizon, tackle key issues around things from cash flow to marketing, to CRMs, to just improving their own general career. So that's been relatively successful. I mean, we've seen a couple of the clients do really well. One left a really neat testimonial in the middle of one of our sessions, which I wasn't expecting. So, you know, I wish he told me, because I look like shit in that video. But, you know, for me, it was like he felt that I added tremendous value, and helping him, you know, break a record that takes him normally 12 years, and he broke it in 9. So, or 12 months, and he broke it in 9.
Nice.
So he was super thrilled at that. And so trying to find all of that, and now working towards that role where I want to find the tribe of people who understand that I'm not after the money necessarily, but money comes as a byproduct, I think.
Right.
And you know, a person would be foolish to say, like, I'm not in it for the money. I am, but I'm not. Like, money isn't the priority.
Right.
The
It's not what drives us,
So the success of the person who's sitting across from me is the important part, right? And of course, I hope that if they're successful, that in turn helps my folks, right?
Absolutely.
And my books really isn't for me, because I don't work for me. I tell everybody that I actually work for the guys who work for me, because
Yeah, absolutely.
you know,
That's the truth.
like I mean, if I wanted just to work for me, I mean, I'd be more than happy and self-sustaining.
Right.
But it's like the drive is to have other people who have hopes and dreams
Right.
that aren't going to be that number one, but can't thrive in certain environments, that wants a positive environment to work with, that they're going to be able to find a home. And that's my job, right? My job is to find the clients, to make sure that their business is running well, and that we get remunerated so that I can sustain the lifestyle and or dreams, or help facilitate more dreams of the people who are working for me, whether it's with our company or whether they have grander dreams or that they're a stepping stone, like much like I said, like whether we're an agency or not, doesn't matter. And we feel like the same from an HR perspective. I don't expect everybody to be a lifer at 360. And I think a lot of people feel like, well, I'm just training my own competition, and I don't feel that way. I feel like I'm going to help somebody else to their own dream,
Right.
and I don't even really give I don't really give it a second thought about helping them. And I think what that's done is it's turned around on its own, where
Right.
like they've accomplished something new, and guess what? They've decided like, hey, I'm going to go back to Justin because like
Absolutely.
during this time, like he was there for us and he didn't want anything.
Yeah, you have that impression that you're building your next competition. But even if you will, because it did happen to me quite a few times, I actually see it as flattering, because bottom line, you came and learned how we do things, and then you walked on your own and you do it. Cool, congrats, right?
Yeah.
Never cool for the company that loses that good element, but
You know,
at the same time, it's about that personal growth where they get to grow and achieve what they're dreaming about, and that's what we're there for, right? Just helping them get there. So
yeah, I think that's the other part of that is it keeps you on your game, because if you've trained your own competition and they've killed you, then you deserve to die,
oh yeah, absolutely.
right? So I tell people, I was like, yeah, I don't mind. I mean, I train my own competition, but at the end of the day, I'm still standing. And it's because I'm playing chess. I'm already 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of that person.
Right.
Because that's the game that I have to play. And if that person feels like they're going to be the cat's meow and they're going to try to win the game, go ahead. The game is about execution. And so if you think you can over-execute me, great. Go ahead. Go for
Absolutely.
it. But in a room full of 100 people, you give them all the same tools, not everybody's going to execute.
No, exactly.
So who am I to care, right? Like, go ahead, do you. I'm going to help you wherever I can, and help get you off the ground. And if you great. If you do it, awesome, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you don't, no skin off my back.
No,
Because
exactly.
I gave you everything that I could possibly give.
Right.
I left it on the table for you. It's yours to take, right?
There you go.
Nothing that we learned can't be
No.
found. Like, if they want to learn whatever you do, you learned it somewhere. So guess
Absolutely.
what? It's available. So
Totally.
me trying to hide my secret sauce,
There's no point.
there's no point,
No.
right?
not today.
I mean, yeah, there's just really no point. It's all about the execution.
Very cool. Very nice. Let's see here. What do we got? Check. All right. So, okay. At Didjet, we really believe in the power of an integrated marketing campaigns. So, when it comes down to what you're doing with 360, what makes 360 truly unique from all your competition?
Well, if you're you have to parse it out. It depends on where you define competition. So if you say another photographer, we have such a deep understanding of brand, and how to repurpose all the things that we do into tangible pieces for the consumer. So we're able to monetize on it, and we're able to think on behalf of a client. Whereas I think the average photographer goes out, has a sort of a basic understanding of what they want, and then they just go to execute it. Where we ask pointed questions, we poke holes in theories, and not to put a chip on our shoulder, but more so because we want to cross all the T's and dot all the I's for
Right.
the client, right? It doesn't serve me any good to make you feel like shit, but it serves me a hell of a lot of good to make you feel like shit because you have a problem in your business that if you fixed it would make my job a hell of a lot easier the next step,
Right.
right? And so if I look at it that way, that I'm doing it purely out of care and consideration for my client and not because I want to be a jerk,
Right.
then I think that's where we shine, right? And I think a lot of our contemporaries, like they go out to an event and just like, oh yeah, capture stuff, and they just go capture stuff, and they don't think about anything else other than capturing it, handing over the files, and see you later. They're transactional, and we're not. We're relationship based, and whether it's a transactional experience, we're always looking for a way as in how can we develop a stronger relationship.
Right.
Even though it was a transaction once, could we still add value somewhere along the way where that person didn't think of? Because at the end of the day, that's how we also win the game. It's because that person goes, oh yeah, like he created this and he totally like read my mind. Like I needed something like extra and I didn't know how to put it into words, or I didn't know how to put it into a graphic or whatever. And these guys just went ahead and did a little bit extra because they were thinking and they're on the gun, right? And that's one of the things.
Interesting. So what does 360 Media do different that none of your competitors do?
Right. To be absolutely honest with you, I don't think that there is a company out there that doesn't have some form or part of what we do. I think, I think as most businesses, I wouldn't say every business, but I'd say where there's most businesses, there is going to be overlap to some degree and in some way, shape, or form. But I think it's the accumulation and the passion that gets driven behind it that makes the real difference, right? So yeah, people can take photos, people can be strategists, like they can be a digital agency. At the end of the day, what would make me different is that when you speak with me and any of the people on the team, you know 100% that we're in your corner and that we're going to be looking out for you at all time. You are our primary concern, and we are looking to hedge all bets to make sure that we give you the best overall product so that we can give you for whatever your budget is, but also looking for things that are coming ahead that you don't see as the iceberg. And I think that level of care is something that maybe not as common, but it is accumulation of factors. Is that we're not transactional. We don't operate as a transactional company. We try to, no matter how that person comes into our system, we always want to try to find a way to deepen that relationship.
Very cool. Interesting. So, all right, final question, I guess. If 360 wasn't in Vancouver, where would it be?
You know, I toyed about this for a long period of time. I actually have a substantial number of clients that are in the Toronto area, and we receive business from a large cities. So, LA, New York, when Dallas, when they have conferences that are in Vancouver, from London. When they're in Vancouver, we get found, and I often think about it because when we go through those activations or we work with them, we find a very common thread is like, oh, I wish we had somebody over, wherever, just like your company, and I'm sure they exist. I would be really hard pressed to believe that other companies wouldn't exist that offer something similar. They're not common, right? And so I think that I feel Vancouver is actually a really small city by comparison to a lot of the metropolitan cities in Canada and the US. So I think by virtue of scale and money in the system, I don't think Vancouver has a ton of money in the system. I think they're in a very small niche pocket, which isn't really abundantly available to tap. I think I would have done better, say, in Toronto, New York, LA, Miami, although I wouldn't want to live in Miami personally.
Why not? I gotta ask. I lived there for many years.
Yeah. So what's your favorite part about Miami?
I got the beach. I'd say the beach, and the worst thing is, and don't hate me for it, I'd say it's the superficial life. I'm not gonna say any people, but the superficial life is annoying.
Yeah, it's a lot of front.
Yes, a lot of front,
a lot of flossing, a lot of flexing, but not a lot of substance some days, right?
No, exactly.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, lovely place, beach. I want to lay.
But I can get that in LA, right? Like I can get beautiful beaches in.
Tip your toes in both, and then tell me what you get in LA.
Dip my toes in both. And
absolutely.
I love LA. I think every city has that layer of superficiality, but I think
There's some places where a little
This-
bit more than
yeah.
others. Yeah.
But I just feel like if you dig really deep into the core or like to that subculture after that superficial, you find a lot of people who are really just hustle. Like
Yes.
they really just push. And some are successful, some are not, and that's okay. But
Yeah,
everybody's out there trying to grind away.
Well, that's
to
what I
make
was
theirs,
saying.
right?
You know, I'm not gonna say any person. It's
Yeah.
not the people
No,
per se,
it's-
because deep inside, I mean, they're hustlers and they're
Yeah,
trying
like
to make
in
happen.
in New York, like everybody out there is on a hustle, right? And everybody out there is trying to make something of themselves, which is great. It's a fast-paced environment, and I love that. Like I find Vancouver some days really slow.
Very
like,
slow.
like I want quick meetings. I want in-out production meetings, but I don't. I mean, I understand the need for longer conversation and fluff. Like some people just need that. That's cool. But I am damn in and out. Like I enjoy going to the fucking bagel shop
Right.
and putting down my $2.49, get my fucking bagel, and see you later.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
looking at the menu and going, oh, what would you get? Oh, I don't know what I would get. I'm like, I know what I want. Just want to get it.
Yeah,
Good
see
morning.
you on.
Thank you. See you later.
So
Right?
do you think that's like a Vancouver thing to be still like that?
It feels
It's like
it's-
me, you work like all
Yeah.
over the place.
Yeah,
right?
and I feel like that. I mean, like the Toronto clients that come, like they're on it. Like they're in,
It's a
they're
yes
out
or
there.
no.
Yeah, it's
I'm in,
yes
I'm
or
out.
no. Like I get quick answers here, and it's a little bit softer.
Right.
Softer is the word. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
use.
yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
And sometimes I think like budget, I guess reality in Vancouver is skewed because I think there's so many people who are willing to do it for free, and because the population isn't abundantly large,
right.
the combination of the two makes all the people who do it as a business suffer because everybody who's willing to do it for
Yeah,
free.
because now suddenly you're fighting against the free.
Yeah, and there's something about free, but when there's a disproportionate amount of free,
Makes it hard to compete
It makes it
against
harder
free.
to compete. Whereas, like in a metropolitan city like Toronto, Montreal, New York, your population density is like
You get
are
some people
still
that are doing
yeah.
it for free, but
And that's
not
okay,
as quick
but
or not
By
as often.
comparison, there's a
Right.
really large difference between the two, right? Because like in a large metropolitan city, I'm like people aren't living at home with their mama.
Yeah.
Vancouver, that's really common.
That's
They're living
really
at
what
home,
it is. Huh?
right? Like in Toronto, like in New York, people are out on their own, like
Hell yeah.
hustling hard to make rent. So not a lot is for free. I mean, they do one or two free to get
Right.
their foot in the door, but like that's
But after
about
that,
it.
yeah,
Like,
that's
but
about
like, they're hustling hard, and I think that's highly respectable. You know, and it just speaks about execution here. I meet tons of people who tell me grand things about how they're going to execute, and 3 or 4 months later, I see them in the same damn place.
Yeah.
And you know,
Well, that's sad. Yeah, we have this area right now, this moment in time where everybody thinks they could do it as a number one, and obviously, not everybody can do it. So we see a lot of those failures more and more, right?
Yeah.
3, 4, 6 months, a year later, whatever.
Yeah.
So.
and I believe like Gary Vaynerchuk probably says it best. It's like this is the era where entrepreneurship became cool.
Yes.
And everybody thinks of it as like this cool thing to
Like
do.
again.
But I mean, entrepreneurship is something that you really have to have a knack for.
Yeah.
I think.
And then it's super cool. Then it's super enjoyable. If you
Yeah.
have that inside of you.
Yeah, I
If
get
you
the
don't have
instinct.
that, then it becomes like a complete nightmare.
Yeah.
And that's probably why we have so much suicide and all that on top of it, right? In the entrepreneur world.
Yeah.
So super cool. You know what? Last question. So you started 360 Media in 2002. What would you have done differently, knowing what you know today?
Oh, if I had to start 360 Media all over again, I think I might have diversified the portfolio earlier. I think I probably would have gone the route of acquiring design and copyright earlier, and changed the face of what 360 would have become. I would have probably become an agency earlier, in terms of being able to produce content. I would have loved to ride that social media wave a lot more than I did, because I was so focused at building the business in itself, right?
Do you think that wave is over?
I think it's like everything else. The first bucket in is always the most successful bucket, right? Now, like everybody wants in, which is fine. It's great, but now there's so much more noise that you have to
Yeah.
elevate
Well, now only the best will stand
yeah,
out,
the cream
right?
of the crop, right? Or the people who are persistent enough to
Yeah.
stay
Just
and
keep
ride
on.
it until
Right.
everybody else just can't keep up,
Absolutely.
right? Because I mean, there are people who produce great content just not generating enough revenue, and guess what? Like that's the long game of that is
Yeah.
they're gonna fall short because
Right.
they got to pay bills and that's gonna win. Like,
Absolutely.
so if you're in a place where you can afford to stay consistent and you don't have to be the cream of the crop, you just have to find your tribe, find your voice,
There you
and
go.
start keep pushing out to your top 1,000,
Mhm.
and that's enough. And I think I think a lot of people get hung up on the hundreds of thousands, the
Okay.
monetizing,
Well, that's
the
the dream
million-
that
yeah.
the internet sells us,
But
right?
that's
It's
the
like
problem.
Hollywood in the 50s, 40s, right? It's
Yeah.
like everybody that would open a TV
can-
suddenly is like, I want to be a Hollywood star and I'll make millions. And it's
Yeah.
like, well,
And
that's not
the
how it
reality
works.
is, for every millionaire, there's hundreds of
Non-millionaires, not even
guys who are
close.
brown bagging and picking money out of the fountain, right?
Crazy.
And that's the real hard reality of it, I think. So I mean, I would have loved to start the agency model earlier. I think I would have found a deeper love and connection, and I think I probably would have accelerated the business growth a lot farther in Vancouver, because I think the amount of money that I sunk into the technology side of things really put a financial hiccup into
Right.
to where I'm at. I mean, without that financial investment, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. Like by comparison of our peers, I wouldn't have the same stockade of equipment. I wouldn't have the same capacity as I would if I started right away now, right?
Right.
So that's where like a lot of people who want to get into my space in the corporate world, they're struggling because they can't have 3 or 4 people out there with their own equipment, can't
No,
have
exactly.
the same turnaround time. They can't keep up with the customer service. It's just too much. It's overwhelming.
Right.
I had the time to build that, and I focused so much effort on building that. But had I known that I would have had such a deep passion for helping business owners rather than just doing my own business, if I'd known that I have the passion, I probably would have gone an agency role earlier or gone into business consulting and changed streams altogether.
Right.
Yeah, because
What
it
a
was.
change of face of your business.
It is, and I don't know if 360 will evolve that way or if it'll be a spin-off, but I feel like it wasn't until maybe the last year or so that I really discovered how deep a passion I have for helping a person's business. Like I get really frustrated looking at a person's business that's suffering,
Right.
and I'm willing to help and offer advice like free of charge, which sometimes comes off as arrogant, but it's because I like truly deeply want that person to succeed. And well, too bad for them to think it's arrogant because like
They're lost.
it's their loss, because honestly I'm not coming from a malicious place, I'm not coming from a place that I think that I'm higher up. It's just
the
there's
way
a fucking problem.
There's a problem.
Fix
Let's
it.
fix it. That's a nice place to end it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
Justin.
for having
Really
me.
appreciate it,
Yeah.
and looking forward to the next time. my
Perfect.
friend.
Thanks, buddy.